Oh no, I'm not waiting for a stagecoach to come by. But I'm telling you, I have a story about this red scarf. My name is Sarah Annette Pittman Smith, First Baptist Church, Llano. And I have a tale to tell you of my experiences having to do with my step of faith. This red scarf came in mighty handy on my trips to Africa. I just tossed it in my suitcase. I didn't know what or whether I would really use it, but on my first trip to Africa, I just about choked to death on the dust that was coming out from under the doors of the bus that we were on in Tanzania, East Africa. And I think I was about the only one that had something to put up like this. And we may have looked like bandits, and those little children that came up to the windows of the bus when we stopped to let off more missionaries, they stared, and I was like this, and I had on a wide brim hat, and I'm sure I looked like a monster. So I took off my mask for a minute and said, hi, and then they started to relax, and their bug eyes, well, they got normal again. So, how did I get to Africa? Well, that's part of my personal testimony. I was already a Christian at the age of 14 when I was washing dishes on a Sunday afternoon. Hate washing dishes. And it was cold. And every once in a while, I would wash a few dishes, then I'd go stand over the furnace. And I was standing over the furnace. You won't believe this, but that's all right. I heard a voice beside me, and I was the only one in the room, and it said, Sarah, I want you to be a foreign missionary to Africa. Well, I knew who it was. I didn't even have time to get scared, nervous, dumbfounded. It was just that and that only. And all I could do is go back and wash some more dishes. Well, I didn't tell anybody, not right away. And then we went to visit somebody in the hospital. I went with my parents, and the man in the bed said, Sarah, what are you going to do when you grow up? I said, I'm going to be a foreign missionary to Africa. Mother and Daddy just about dropped their teeth. Well, I had an aunt who was a teacher, so she was an influence, sort of a role model for me. So I planned to be an English teacher to the black people of Africa. But time went by, the Lord sent me a wonderful man. We didn't understand because he wasn't a mission volunteer, but we prayed for months before we got married. When we left Amarillo, where I was born and where we met, we moved to San Antonio, where he was working at the Kelly Air Force Base as a civil servant. We had already trained to teach literacy before we moved. And our church, First Baptist Church of Castle Hill, sponsored a mission downtown among the Spanish-speaking people. And the language missionary and his wife became our very best friends because we volunteered to work there. We started out teaching English to the Spanish people, had a great time. Well, that led to many adventures over a period of 29 years. And I thought, well, Lord, San Antonio must be my Africa, because it's sure hot enough. It took me 3 years to get accustomed from moving from the panhandle of Texas to South Texas, much more humid. And then one day, after we had moved from San Antonio to Llano to retire, and we were members here at this church, there was a man came by to speak to us one Sunday night, and he was Mr. Cavett, the president of International Commission, a branch of the Baptist Foreign Mission Board, and he explained how people could be short-term missionaries. And by the time he finished his spiel about doing missionary work just for a little while, I knew how I was finally going to Africa at the age of 70 years. White hair, pudgy figure, and all. So, Judge, delivered me to the air terminal with a bunch of luggage and a backpack. And when we kissed goodbye there and I turned around, I said to myself, Lord, it's you and me. Here I am. I'm yours. Take over and you lead me wherever you want me to go. That was my leap of faith. That plane trip was terrific. It was long. I did not see anybody else who was a group assignment, had been assigned to the International Commission, until I got to Amsterdam and I saw one lady and we hugged each other and we turned out to be roommates. Well, Tanzania was our first assignment. I met the friendliest, most wonderful people there, and I just fell in love with that village. They raised corn and sugar cane and several other things, and if they didn't have a crop, they didn't get to eat. So it was one of those situations. But the trip was well planned, and people, we walked from hut to hut to hut, 17 miles I walked the first week. And so, now the whole thing was only 2 weeks long, but it took several days to get there and several days to get back, so it was actually from one Saturday, then the Sunday, then the whole week, and we started back on the next Sunday. So I loved Tanzania. I went to Kenya next. Had some experience there with some Muslim men who came out of their house and they were dressed in black and they were very formal. And I'm mentioning these people because they were the only ones who did not respond to the gospel story. Now let me tell you this. In Tanzania, nobody in that, well, only 4 people in that little church could read English. So the only way we could witness was by telling them our own personal testimony about how we met Jesus and what he meant to us. Only the children were learning in school at that time to read English. So we left leaflets, and the children loved those leaflets, and they could read them to their parents because they were learning English in school. All right, in Kenya, the Muslims, of course, they rejected Jesus altogether. And as I walked away, my interpreter said, Miss Smith, don't worry that they didn't accept Jesus. That's to be expected because they're hard-headed. Well, the next trip, I went back to Kenya, different place, had a wonderful experience going from place to place. And then I begged if I could go back to see my friends in Tanzania, branch off from the group. And it was arranged with International Commission and so forth, and they drove me special to the airport. I boarded a puddle jumper compared to the big jets that I had been on, and this was right at the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro that I landed, and Brother Samuel and my interpreter, this was the land where they spoke Swahili. I learned about this many words in Swahili. Jambo means morning, good morning, and Asante means thank you, and that's the limit of what I'm going to try to remember right now. So I had a second experience there with Brother Samuel and his wife Juliana. I spent 2 nights. Brother Samuel said, Sister Sarah, since you spent the night under my roof, we're going to have to make a special arrangement because of our culture. So I'm already married, so we're going to have to adopt you. And you'll be the grandmother, and from now on your name is Coco. That means grandmother in Swahili. Later they adopted J.H., and his name in Swahili is Akwi, A-K-W-I. So we have been adopted by our friends, the pastor of Omaringa Baptist Church, Omaringa Village near Arusha, Tanzania. In Kenya, I visited the Kaobana village. And then, the last village I visited was Utithi in Kenya. And in this village, we went to another village that was settled by the Somalis who had come across the border. And in this Somali village, instead of having a courthouse in the middle, there was a big Muslim mosque. And it had painted on the edge of it, Mohammed is our prophet. He has no son. And let's see, Allah is our God. Mohammed is our prophet. He has no son. In English, I was amazed. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we were chased out of that village. We had just gotten off the bus and we were planning how we were going, which way we were going to go, because the village was in a square shape. Houses, Muslim, mosque. Here came two men, and they did not look happy. Now, keep in mind that they spoke Swahili and I didn't. But you can read the language and the gestures and know exactly what's going on. And they wanted us out of there. And our pastor who was with us was doing like this and talking and gesturing like this. So when he finished, he said, well, we've got to leave. But we'll go down this way, and as we leave, we'll visit these houses here beside the road. And we won 3 people to the Lord in spite of everything on that side of the road. And on this side of the road, we won another man to the Lord. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, when a Muslim commits to Christ, their life is in danger because they could be killed. Well, before we left, here came 4 men, and they were really head up. And our pastor, Brother Isaac, really had to do some tough talking at that time, and so we left pretty soon after that. No, I was not scared. On all of those trips, I was not ever scared. But although on my first trip I didn't have any physical pain, I was doing fine. On the other trips, my knees were giving out. And on that last trip, when the pastor was talking to the 4 men and there was some fist shaking going on, I was in such pain I had to pace back and forth. And I don't know whether they thought I was scared or what, but I couldn't stand still. There was no place to sit down. And the bus was not due until a few minutes. Well, actually, we went down the road. And we went, part of us stayed under a shade tree and witnessed people coming by, and the other half split off and went to a village, and there were about 10 of us all together. Had a little thing called an EvangeCube. And my interpreter took that EvangeCube and just stood beside the road. Here came a man on a bicycle. And before long, there were 6 people looking over his shoulder at that EvangeCube, which was the story of the gospel in pictures. The International Commission passed out a crate of EvangeCubes to that group, 144 cubes, and they were well used, and they are still used to this day as far as I know, telling the story of Jesus. Well, I wasn't ever scared. That incident with the Somali people coming and threatening us was the most exciting thing, I suppose you would say. The worst thing was the air trips. It took so long to get from one place to the other, I'll declare. It was miserable. And if the restrooms weren't working properly on the bus with 250 people on board, 2 restrooms, and they're supposed to have 4, that was I won't go into the details of what kind of well, maybe you want to know. in that part of Africa, they don't have a place to sit down to use the restroom. They're just a little hole they dig a big hole like in our outdoor toilets of yesteryear, and then they cover that with some clay that's hard and it looked like cement, and they leave a little hole, and you're supposed to aim at that hole. Well, as I said, by the time I had my third trip, my knees were that was a difficult time. But the Lord was with us all the way. I felt His hand on me, guiding me, telling me what to say. For instance, when we met this Muslim mother with a little child in her hands, in her lap, I said, I haven't witnessed to a Muslim in Tanzania before. Lord, what am I going to say? And He told me what to say. Compare the story of Jesus, the Son of God that was sacrificed, to the story of Abraham being willing to sacrifice his son Isaac. Well, the Lord took care of everything, and that woman gave her life and soul to Jesus. So that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. And I thank Craig for the opportunity to tell you that when you turn yourself over to Jesus and say, "Here I am, Lord, I'm yours," you don't have to be afraid of anything. Like Peter stepping out on the water to walk. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he could walk on the water. I've been blessed to talk to you and tell you about my trips to Africa. Made 4 in all. The last one was Sierra Leone. And yeah, I would go back again. Man, if I were in physical, and if I were young, oh my goodness, if I were younger, in Tanzania, they thought gray hair was really something special, because in that particular village, people didn't live long enough to have gray hair, so they thought I was really special. Well, the Lord thinks each one of us is special because He loved us enough to give His life for us and pay the penalty for our sins. So boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, this is my testimony. Jesus is Lord. Every knee will bow to Jesus eventually. Keep that in mind. And pray for us old people. Our time is coming up pretty quick because Jesus is coming soon. And that's my story. Thank you.